And this now means that Ferrari have a great chance of overtaking McLaren next week. If Lando would come second, I mean, it's basically over. We're talking about winning the Constructors, which could be decided by the race control giving a penalty that just seems way over the top. No, what's good? Let's go.
Yeah,
we're
let's
live. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Didn't record over the weekend. We had another illness.
We did.
We've a bit of a spotty schedule recently, but we're back. And the spotty schedule, to be fair, is going to increase. I'll be away next week.
Yeah.
But we're moving into the summer. You're going to be on holidays.
I will be.
A bit of time just to chill and get a good schedule going and hopefully get a good routine. And over the summer, I mean, a lot of NFL, soccer.
Plenty of NFL getting in the playoffs sort of style and
sort of
season.
European North American sports kick off. I mean, in Australia, again, we only really have the cricket over the December period, but sort of heats up. You got the Big Bash and test
obviously
matches.
more importantly, like college, we don't usually look at it early, but later in, I mean, we've already talked about some games just, privately.
Oh, yeah. I mean, college football is going to be a huge play. I mean, the first time ever, they got the big 16 playoff, so it's going to be a lot of hype around that. I mean, college in general has just got a lot of eyeballs. It's doing really well. Yeah. It's going to be fun to watch, see how it all plays out, those games. I mean, I don't want to get too in the weeds already. I don't know how many college football fans there are listening, but Ohio State, Michigan, what a game that was. Michigan with a huge upset against Ohio State. And you see the scuffle afterwards?
Yeah, I did.
On the middle, trying to plant the flag. Man, that was like a 5-minute scuffle of just constant fights and back. I mean, that was like old school style.
I never knew if there was any like previous aggression between the teams previously.
It's a big rivalry. Yeah, this is probably the biggest rivalry in college football.
But anything got as to like that scale where it gets a bit out of hand?
No, I think that was like I mean, Ohio State lost the last 4 games to Michigan. I'm saying they play once a year, so it's like their Super Bowl, really.
Yeah.
And you lose this one where they were huge favourites. Michigan obviously won the national title last year, and then this year their team is considerably worse across the board. Ohio State are probably the most financially backed team in the entire country. Yeah. And to lose again to Michigan when they were the huge favourites, their offense just didn't do what they were supposed to do. They have matchup advantages all across the park. And then for Michigan to win that when they clearly weren't expecting it, their emotions were high. Ohio State were a bit embarrassed. And then Michigan come out and try to put the flag in Ohio. I mean, just what else was going to happen? I don't know the history well enough to know if this has been like a recurring, flags.
It gives me vibes of the going to the Dallas Star in the middle of the field. Who was that? That was Randy, right? Is that Moss?
I think so.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, great to watch. I mean, you love to see the passion.
Yeah,
these sort of rivalries. So that's the best thing about college football is the.
I respect the competitiveness.
Yeah, there's a lot of pride in it. Sort of pride for the school, for the program, especially those key rivalries. The Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, plenty of other. Texas for Oklahoma and stuff like that. But yeah, it's gonna be a great playoff series. Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, we'll see if Colorado can get in there, but that'd be a great story. We'll see where the chips fall. I mean, all the big dogs, Georgia, Alabama, they've all lost a few games this year. They're not looking dominant. Oregon's probably the most dominant team so far this year, but they don't really get the big headlines. They're not as a sort of historic. They're a big school, but they're not one of the big boys in the football. Yeah, at least the last decade or so.
Their QB's passed he's got the most touchdowns in all of college, right? Didn't he get the record a couple of weeks ago or something? Maybe. I think so.
But the whole team. I mean, that team's from top to bottom. So we've got one of the best rosters. They're buttoned up, well coached. Yeah. The offense is probably in college football. That's why the quarterback class isn't strong this year. So a lot of the offenses in the college football are not as dynamic as they've been previously. Like teams like Ohio State have a really great receiving core. Apparently, they have 3 NFL caliber wide receiver players in Ohio State. Their QB's kind of mediocre, and that's sort of the formula for a lot of these college teams, where great weapons, skill guys that just get the ball and make insane plays, but the actual QB itself is kind of middle of the road. Can make some plays with their legs, but isn't able to make those insane throws. So it's an interesting year for college football, especially with the NIL and the transfer portal. We're seeing a lot of change. You're seeing a lot of coaches. I saw Nick Saban came out the other day and just smashed the way college football is at the moment, with all the teams. As soon as a player gets cut or dropped or doesn't like the coach, just enters the portal straight away. Yeah. It's not creating any resilience. It's giving all the power to the players rather than power to the coaches and to the colleges. So it's creating a really weird dynamic. Now you've got money involved, and the schools that have a lot of backing can pay these players more. So
and it's at any time of year, right? They don't have transfer
you can
market.
It's like
any time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it completely changes the way it was done previously.
Yeah.
And some will say for good because at least they're getting paid now. You know, these colleges and NCAA were making billions off of these players, and they were making nothing. But now I think they've gone too far to the other end, where they've basically given players all the power, not all the power, but so much of the power in terms of their leverage to enter the portal, their leverage to get sponsorships and money themselves.
It helps them get on the teams that they feel like they can, you know, show themselves up to actually have a better stock in the draft and stuff like that.
And coaches
as well.
have to walk on eggshells because if you annoy one of your players, it's like,
I'm
out of here.
Who
cares? Exactly. So a coach like Saban, which, you know, coaches players hard, expects high standards. Previously, a player just had to accept that. Yeah. And while it might suck for the player in the moment, long term, you learn some grit, some resilience, how to, you know, not everyone's going to have like a Peyton Manning type career where from the moment you enter, you are just excellent throughout to the end of your career because you have that mentality already. Some players need to go through some mud. You know, you're an excellent high school player. Yeah. You might have to get to college and realize, okay, I can't just be the greatest player of all time. I have to go through some hard times to learn how to deal with it and be better. Yeah. But if you never have to deal with that in college now because players can just leave as soon as things get hard, well, you know, that's going to make some problems. So
that's on the player though. Obviously, if a player goes, "Oh, I'm just going to leave and not, you know, stick it out through the mud," as you're saying, it just goes to show the person they are and the player that they're going to be. So it just hurts their chances. Probably.
But if that's the majority of the players doing that, you know, that
so it just that's why it's probably just goes to put more sort of. What am I trying to say? It probably helps the people that would stick into it and they have that sort of gene or personality trait to sort of stand out from others.
Built in as a kid, and then that's now going to be a determining factor in making you stand out compared to just.
Obviously, I'm not a scout or anything, but maybe scouts are probably actually looking at that sort of past sort of trend as well as to like how you went through your career and stuff like that. Like surely that's a factor.
It separates you out for sure, but it's also outside of the draft for just the teams itself, like these Alabama teams that used to be able to just go and scout and get the best high school players. Yeah. That's no longer the case because now players can enter the portal. Other schools can offer money as well. And obviously there's still an advantage to the big schools because they have more cash. But it's the entire framework of how college was done for the last decades is now completely shifted on its head in a really quick turnaround. So these schools are trying to get on top of this really quick, and it's going to create a lot of instability over the next few years. Yeah. So we're going to see how it unfolds. Now, the plus side is extended playoffs. They're making the games matter more. The media attention and the sort of fanfare is higher than ever in college football. So that's a benefit. But my biggest concern is these changes they're making. Yes, it benefits the short term. Like right now, it fixes everyone's problems. Like recently with players not getting paid, only a 14 playoff. These problems that were very short term, but it might fix those at the cost of long-term issues that they're going to cause down the track with the transfer portal, with not having sort of length contract-wise, where it's just, as you said, anyone can enter the portal at any time, players not sticking around, having so much money in these college programs where before it was you had to do well in college to get to the NFL to get money. Now they're getting these big paychecks in college, how that's going to change things. So I'm not sort of landing on either side at the moment. I just think all this change is going to create some uncertainty, and it's no guarantee that it's going to lead to a better outcome long-term versus just sticking with what was working. Yeah. But yeah, anyways, that was plenty.
We were not expecting.
We said we're not going to go into the weeds, and we just went deep into the weeds. So anyone who's not a fan of college football has just already turned us off and said see you later. But anyone who did stick around, you've made the right decision.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you just want to make the transition, stay with the sport, go to NFL?
I mean, I reckon we start with the NRL. Let's
start with the NRL.
Let's break it up. Let's go. You know.
Well, you tell us.
We are borderless sports, so let's just go bang,
just
bang,
jump
bang.
from
country
border
to
to border.
Yeah, no one knows where we're going to go next.
All right, I love it. Well, you start us off because I reckon you've probably got the most keen sort of judgment on this one.
Laurie Daley named new head coach of the New South Wales Blues. Yep. I wouldn't say out of left field. I think I heard rumours of this. I mean, there wasn't too many big coaches putting their hand up for the job. Laurie Daley's obviously been the coach before, probably during one of the worst periods for the New South Wales Blues, where Queensland were the most dominant. Yeah. It's an interesting choice to go back to the well rather than picking someone new and fresh, especially coming off a series win. Go to a coach that, I think his record's like 6-15 or something overall in terms of games. That's not a great record, but as you said, you've got to factor that in with the fact that Queensland was one of their most dominant periods. We'll see how it goes. I don't really have a strong opinion either way, if it's a good choice or a bad choice. Laurie Daley, from what I've heard, is a great bloke. My partner, she had something to do with him during COVID, where she was like giving them COVID tests and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
So she like met him, and she said he's a great bloke. So I'm happy for him, and he's a New South Wales Blue through and through. But I just for me it's just more interesting that they went back to someone tried and tested who didn't have the most successful coaching career, that I wouldn't say failed, but with no means by any metric would you say was a successful coach.
Yeah.
As I said, the biggest thing was that there wasn't really any other major players or coaches putting their hands up to take it. I think it was like I forgot the names, but they were like assistant coaches at the moment.
So
there
no
wasn't
like
any
big
head
guns
coaches.
that are
There
currently
was
in
no
the
big guns
NRL.
putting their hand up.
Yeah.
I did hear that Craig Bellamy is going to be a advisor, like an assistant coach, not like an assistant coach, but just an advisor, which is obviously great. I think if the Blues would have, they would have picked Bellamy to be the head coach, but obviously he just didn't want to do it.
So I'm guessing that more goes into just team selection and stuff, and
I think just
sort
more
of behind
just
the
around the
scenes
group,
sort of,
like what was it last year? Who did the Maroons brought in someone to help? But anyway, like you sort of just have these play. Oh yeah, no, the Blues last year had Ivan Cleary brought in. Like he wasn't an official assistant coach, but he comes in around the group, sort of offers some insights and just different perspective. And obviously he's coaching at the top of the game. Like Bellamy and Cleary, you could probably say the two best coaches in the entire league. So just having them around, just giving some insights. They know what it's like to win. They know what it's like to a lot of the players they coach themselves. So that's a huge benefit, and just a bit of confidence around the group, and just his sort of personality. I think is good to have around.
He's coming into like a team that's probably well sort of built at the moment, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, like coming off a series win.
Yeah.
It was a good win. I can't honestly. My memory's
so far along.
Like, it seems so far away, but it wasn't really that far away. I think it was pretty dominant. Like I think the team just probably the best New South Wales have looked in a few years. I'd say. Like
the second was a pretty big turn of events, right? Because the first one they lost.
Yeah, but the second one was when they just blew them away.
Dominated
in the first
them.
half. Like probably the most dominant Origin half you'll see.
Yeah.
And then the third one, they went into Suncorp and beat Queensland in a pretty dominant display too. It wasn't really that close. Their forwards did really well. Their back line, which is where the Blues have their advantage, I would say, is in their back line. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure for Daley coming in, a team that's just won against a Queensland team that's going to be desperate this year to get back. They're not going to want to lose two in a row. They'll probably be a bit embarrassed by losing that third game in Suncorp last year. So they're going to have a chip on their shoulder this year. So you're having a coach coming in off a win, pressure on him, who's already had a stint that hasn't gone too well in the coaching gig. Hasn't really been coaching recently. Like he hasn't coached since, I don't know when he left. I think it was around 2016 when Fittler came in, but don't quote me on that. But it was around that time. That's 8 years of not coaching, and the game's changed a fair bit since then. It's gone a lot faster. I know he's still been around the game. Like it's not as if he's been up in the Himalayan mountains just not watching, but the game's changed. It's gotten a lot faster. The rule changes. It's not just going to be a simple plug and play where he can just figure out these new game plans and how to play. He's going to have to do a fair bit of study, and there might be some growing pains. But the thing in Origin, you don't really get it. You get that first game, super important. You lose that, it's nearly series over. It wasn't last year, but so I said it's a bold move to pick someone that's not coaching or in with the players and that sort of thing. But as I said, on the flip side, it's if no one's putting their hands up, what are you supposed to do? So it's sort of a safe pick, and we'll see how it goes. But I don't think there'll be too much opinion either way. Like maybe there's some Blues fans who go, "Why are we going back to this guy?" There'll be some Blues fans who are happy because Daley's a Blues legend and he's a nice guy who's been around the league and doesn't really have anyone who's opposed to him. But I don't think it's a strong choice. Like I don't think you're going to go into the Origin game going, we're better at coach. I think it's just more of a bit of a horizontal sideways move.
Yeah.
So
well, he hasn't been away from the game, right? Like he's
been
done
working
his
for TAB and stuff like that. He's been doing some of the betting. Like goes on the Matty John show and gives the betting insights and what the odds are doing.
So it's not like he came back from the dead from nowhere.
Exactly. But again, there's a difference between being betting and being sponsorships and going to and giving speeches versus doing the ins and outs of coaching. As I said, the game is changing a lot. Like you speak to anyone, the way the game, because these rule changes, the 6 again rules,
so much quicker.
You watch a game from 2014 to 2024. It's night and day how much faster it is, how much more fatigue there is, especially in Origin. The game's, it's obviously still relatively, the game's still NRL, but all these little tweaks that when you really get into the nuance of it really distinguishes how it's played today versus how it was even just 10 years ago. So it's going to be interesting to see how he grapples with that change and how he grapples with the new style of play. And so give him the benefit of the doubt. you can't critique his resume too harshly because, as I said, that Queensland team, I don't think it would have mattered too many how many coaches you had during that time. The Queensland's team were just, I mean, you had probably 4 or 5 immortals when all things are said and done in that team. You know, Thurston, Cronk, Smith, Slater, and you could throw in maybe Munster, Cherry Evans, down to the later ends. I think Lockyer was in the early stages of that, like at the early run of that dynasty. So. Yeah, one of the best teams, Origin teams of all time, if not the best Origin team of all time. So it's difficult to put too much blame on Daley to have to coach through that era. And at the end of the day, did win one series, so that's something. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. And I think Blues fans, because they won last year, will have a bit of patience. But if he goes out and gets blown out 3-0, then that could
rise some
people could get sour
eyebrows
pretty quickly. Yeah. But yeah, interesting choice. Nothing too crazy. And it's like, oh my goodness, it was kind of like the rumors have been floating around for a little while that he was going to be the coach. So yeah, when I read it, I was like, oh yeah, okay. But yeah, bit of news for the rugby league, which is always good.
Yeah, well, I mean, sticking with the same sort of theme coaching wise, but swap codes.
Yeah, a bit different, but still same.
Yeah, same.
Pretty
Same,
big.
but different.
The Swans probably one of the biggest franchises.
Yeah.
I mean, we live in Sydney, right? So
we hear it the most over here, being on this side of the border.
Well,
but
I think you'd argue the Swans are probably one of the biggest because the Sydney team, one of the probably the team of the state.
Yeah, and I guess they've been consistently, fighting in playoffs and making grand finals and stuff, as we'll discuss.
Lots of second places.
Yeah, so it came out a couple of days ago, as we're talking right now. But the Swans coach Longmire steps down. So we see they've replaced him with Dean Cox, who's currently his assistant. So he's been his right-hand man for years. So
it's not too much of a pivot then.
Not too much of a pivot. Obviously you either get Swans fans that arguably don't like him. Longmire, probably just because of the grand final results. It's painful. He's 1 from 5. After this year, they won the 2012 one, and then 3 of the 4 that he's lost, they were minor premiers.
Yeah, but the thing is, they get it the last couple have been smoked.
So
close.
Yeah, so obviously last one Brisbane, that was kind of just blown out straight after half time. The one before
was even worse.
The one before against Geelong, that was
one of the worst grand finals.
That was we went to the cafe a couple of hours before it, and we were so hyped for it. We go home and we're chatting,
the first quarter
and it's just it was done over, and we were just like, what is going on?
Yeah, and honestly, for me, I think it's a move that kind of has to be made, because let's say they get to another grand final. That monkey, it's still going to be there, but at least you have to make some change. And so it's not a huge pivot, because you still got the assistant coach, obviously, but man, that record, that plays on your mind. That is going to be in every player in that dressing room. The entire organization is going to be aware of them falling at the finish line, and that's going to be hard to overcome mentally.
I just find how hard it is, I find it harsh to put it onto him. I feel, obviously, that there's a time when it comes down to coaching, how you're preparing them, what's the lead up, what are you doing different to a regular season where they're sort of dominating teams. Obviously, they had that lull period, in between the middle of the season where they lost, I think it would have had been 5 or 6 in a row or something.
That happens,
but yeah,
it's a long season.
So, and then they come back to good form, coming into playoffs. They're pretty much winning pretty convincingly in the finals. They're the favourites the whole way through. But I think you kind of just need to put it on the players a bit as well. They're not coming out, they're not doing their job. So I find it a bit harsh going at Longmire. But, Swans fans were fed up. You can just tell by all the comments, across all the socials, Twitter, Reddit, they're pretty happy that he's gone. Some are sad, you get 50-50, but, they're not moving too far away from his play style anyway. You've got, you bring in a coach that's been under him for these many years. There wouldn't be much difference in how they think, how they go through the game and stuff like that. It's not a massive pivot
I think
they're going to move to.
But the thing is, I understand what you're saying. The players 100% do it. It's the age-old question in sport. Do you blame the coach and management or the actual players who do it? The thing for me that puts it a bit more on the coach is the fact that they're losing these games in the first half. right? These last couple grand finals, they've lost it early.
Yeah.
It's not like they're losing a nail biter right down to the end. They've just been tipped at the line. It's like, okay, so be it. They're losing. Like, you can't really put that on the coach. But when you're losing these games in the first half, that is your preparation. That's coming in how you're coming into the game. Now, yes, the players are responsible for their own preparation, but it could be also the attitude of the team. Is there too much pressure on them? Are they doing things differently throughout the week? Is Longmire too relaxed where he's not putting enough sort of urgency in them? Is he the opposite way where he's too uptight and he's making them anxious and putting too much adrenaline in them? I said, I don't know. Obviously not in the inner room, and I'm not sort of wired into the AFL to know these things. But the fact is that they look poor early on in games, which is preparation, mentality, how you prepare, what your mindset's like. Yeah. And you have to put a fair bit of that onto the coaching staff. And as you said, though, the coaching staff is still effectively the coaching staff. The only difference is the head of it has changed to the assistant. So it's an interesting move, a move that I think had to be made. As I said, at least now, if you make a grand final again, you can look a little different. It's not going to be the exact same face saying the same things. He would have had to answer the same questions this year. They would have had to answer next year, except this time there's an extra year's worth of failure on there. Yeah. So I said, you've got to have to listen to the fans eventually. I think the fans are happy overall, as you said, and 1 out of 5 is just...
Yeah, it's not a good look.
It goes to are you better losing in the second round of the finals rather than losing in the grand final? At the end of the day, you made the grand final. That's supposed to be well done. It's better than not making the 8. It's better than getting to the semis. That's effectively the second best thing you can do. Yeah. But in the mind, like, it plays tricks on you, where it's if you lose a grand final, it feels worse. It sticks with you. It hurts more for the fan base, for the players, for everyone.
If you're not first year last sort of mentality, and that's what a lot of fans have,
And it's like this close, when you're that close to the finish line, when you don't win, and instead of, you don't just not win, you like trip over. That's like so painful compared to like, we just came 9th. Sorry,
bro, that scared the shit out of me.
If you came 9th, we just missed the 8. You're annoyed for a week, and then you're over it. You fall over in the grand final, it sticks with you to the next season. Like, it's a long pain. Yeah. So I think you lose. So 1 out of 5. That record's just not good enough. Is it the coach's fault? Is it the player's fault? It's clearly a mix. It's not. But it's not one-on-one. But at the end of the day, you can't change all the players. A lot of the Swans players are some of the best players in the league. Yeah. You can't change the nucleus of that. And I think you had to make a change. I probably would have changed the whole coaching staff, but ultimately you finish minor premiers. Do you really want to change too much? So I think they've settled a happy medium. You change the face, the coach. Don't change the entire coaching staff. You don't change the players. You keep the same team, and you just hope that if you get in that position again, you can right your wrongs and not fall over. Yeah,
that's right. Like, the only thing, like, when I'm thinking about sort of the argument to get him out is the lack of adjustment within game. Like, so obviously they're getting blown out at the start preparation-wise, but then there's no adjustment to that to then bring it back. But maybe they're just so far out and behind at that halftime mark. Like, what can he say to turn that around?
There's also a thing, is he giving adjustments and the players aren't
able to carry he seems like a very sort of like, nice, kind, level-headed guy, like at least in press conferences and stuff. Like, obviously, every AFL coach, you see them going mental in the box.
They're very high.
They go high in the box, but I think when he's face-to-face, he seems like a very, like, level-headed sort of person.
Obviously, in the moment, he has reactions, but you don't see him...
Yeah.
It doesn't stick with him like it does some other coaches. Like, you can see they're red hot. Yeah. I forgot who the coach was of. Was it Brisbane or someone who was like fighting with the players after the game? Was that Brisbane coach in the semi?
Oh yeah, when you're against Port Adelaide, when he was like chirping at him.
Yeah. That's, you won't see Longmire doing that.
Yeah.
So it's a.
The Port Adelaide coach.
Port Adelaide
coach against Hawthorn.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah. We'll see. So Swans will have the exact same team. They've just lost Luke Parker. That's the only change. They've got some new draftees. Couldn't tell you if they're any good or not, but they won't see a lot of playing time. So they'll stick with the same sort of core group. They're just going to have to, try and pick up in their forwards, I would say, like a bit more contested possessions and bit more forward progress. That's probably the two main things that they have to work on.
The first 6 weeks of the season is going to be really interesting. It's going to be funny to see how this goes. We go 2 ways. They could either come out with a chip on their shoulder and like sort of how they did this year and go, okay, we all off season, that taste of failure in that grand final is going to be burning on them, and they come out of this season out of the gates and just go bang. Or go the other way where they feel tight, a bit depressed that they've lost another final. It's a lot of the same guys. Yeah. Lost the coach. Maybe they feel a bit of guilt and blame for the coach having to leave for their failure. I keep using failure, it's a bit of a harsh word, but so it's going to be interesting to see if they regress in these first few games where they get tight, they feel just a little nervous, a little emotional about the whole thing, and they don't play well together, or if they come out of the gates like a house on fire and rip off 4 or 5 wins off the trot.
I think the best thing is like it happened this early in pre-season that it sort of like gives them 3-4 months to like, at least they didn't do it a month
still a bit
before
late,
or
though.
something like that.
Like it's still, the season ended like what, 3 months ago, 4 months
yeah,
ago?
well, when's the final? October?
Yeah, so it's 2-3 months.
That's
a
2-3
while.
months.
Like, in the
I'm
grand
guessing
scheme
there
of
was a
things.
lot of like discussions back and forth, I guess,
Yeah.
and just trying to figure out what he wanted to do. And I know
I don't know. To me though, that just seems. Like
he's staying within the group as well.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's staying within the group. Like he's head of director of something.
Oh, right. So
like,
it really is a very.
Yeah, like
pivot.
he's stepping back. I don't know how much say that. Like it's such a weird title.
It's effectively changing your profile picture on Facebook. It's you're the same person. And
the relationship status.
Yeah, you're like nothing's really changing. You're just changing the outward facing face. Like so, he's basically moving to like it's. You're moving to
technically still moving back in spots.
You're getting a promotion without being a sack. Like you're still in the team. It's like what you when NRL players retire and they get a job within the retire.
Robbie Farah with the
and they get like they get a coaching job or a performance job. It's like, hey, you want to retire? We'll still pay you a salary and keep you employed. It's like a little nudge. I think this is probably a similar thing where they're like, okay, we need to make a change. It's time. I don't know what their reasoning was, but they clearly thought they needed to make a change, but they didn't. The coaching group was still strong and had the backing of the board. Yeah. And so they've just made a face change, and the assistant coach is going to be the head coach, and the head coach is moving to a more of a director of football type thing. Well, that honestly kind of changes things. I really don't think there's going to be that much of a difference there. Yeah. Because the assistant coach and the head coach, if he's been his right-hand man, it's going to be effectively the exact same thing.
That's what I thought the whole time. That's why I thought if it was going to be anything drastic, why not just look elsewhere?
And if anything, that just for me, it's like, why? It's like kind of like, you're making this change, and now you're kind of putting a bit more pressure on yourselves because once you get rid of the coach, it's like it's like what we're seeing with a bit of a pivot here, but we see with the New York Jets, where you fire the coach in week 4 or 5 or whatever it is, and when that doesn't work, all of a sudden then you start hitting panic button because it's firing the coach. Obviously, they haven't fired him; they've just moved him. Yeah. But getting rid of the coach is sort of the first and last step in. It's like the beginning of the end of the current iteration. Once the coach goes, that's like you saying, "Okay, we've tried everything else. This is our last gasp. If this doesn't work, we've got to blow the whole thing up." Yeah. So with them doing that,
you mean Bears, right? Because you said Jets before.
No, Jets, like Salah.
Oh, so you're talking about Salah.
Yeah, I'm talking about Salah when they fired him earlier in the year.
Yeah, right.
And then they keep losing. If anything, they've looked worse once they fired him, right?
Yeah.
So now you can't blame the coach. You can't blame anyone else. It's like, oh crap, the players and the system isn't working. It's not one man. It's not this guy or this guy. It's the system. So now what's happening with the Swans is if the same things happen or if they struggle, the whole deck's going to have to be cleared out. Yeah. So they really haven't changed anything. They've just, I said, put a different face on change the profile picture without actually changing anything drastically or deep within inside the organization. So if something does go wrong this year, they fail to even make the playoffs or they get to a big game and get smoked in the first quarter again, well, those questions are going to be amplified, not drowned out, because effectively it's the same group of people doing the same problems.
So is it, I don't know, it kind of goes to me saying now it's kind of a failure if they don't make the finals.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
They have to make the finals.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a team that won the minor premiership that was favourites, pretty heavy favourites in the grand final. And as we said, their problems in the grand final are separate from how good their team is. I think you got to separate their mentality or their preparation in grand finals versus who they are just as a team. Yeah. So they have to make the finals. But that's the thing. If they don't, you're just going to start questioning everything. Well, why did they make this coaching change? Should they have made a full coaching change where they get a whole new staff in rather than just doing a tiny little pivot? Should they have done a big right-hand turn instead of just a little veer to the left? Yeah. There's going to be some big questions being asked if things don't go well. Now, winning fixes everything. You can go on, win the premiership, and we'll be looking back going, wow, that was a masterstroke to switch Longmire out and get this new guy in. Time will tell.
Or it's a 180 and it's completely different.
Yeah, time will tell. It's an interesting choice. Nothing too drastic, but as I said, I think my point still stands that they had to do something. The argument is going to be, should that something have been something more serious, a more serious turn, or is the slight turn good enough? Some will argue they won the minor premiership, they got to the grand final. You don't need to make a huge pivot. Others will argue this is 1 out of 5. It's not just a Longmire problem. It's probably a whole coach organizational problem. You should have made a big pivot to try to get a whole new outlook on things. Yeah. Both arguments are valid, and only time will tell which one was right.
Yeah. I'd love to hear what Swans supporters think,
honestly.
Swans
supporters, let us know, because it's an interesting take on...
Very.
Especially the fact that he's not leaving, right? He's just sort of moving to a different position.
Yeah. I mean, let's just stick with coaches at the moment. This is kind of the theme, but Bears.
Yeah,
Eberflus gets
Eberflus sacked.
Yeah.
I mean...
Comes after a bit of a blunder with the...
on national TV, Thanksgiving game. That game as well
all eyeballs on him.
Like the prime time. It's everyone's watching, and you just make... I think even someone who's played 20 minutes of Madden would understand that was a blunder. You can't do that. And
it was there to steal too.
What was that?
It was there to steal that game.
Yeah, it was 100%. Well, at least overtime for sure.
Yeah.
There's no excuse not to have a field goal in that situation. It was coming. Everyone knew it was coming. It should have been done at the start of the year. Just poor management by the Bears. You should have given Caleb a new coach. Now the rest of this whole season's been a waste. You fired your OC. You fired your coach. You should fire the guy that's hired those two guys, or decide to keep Eberflus. You've wasted this year of Caleb Williams. You've stunted his development. You've now created questions on his ability to be an NFL player. You've put question marks on the entire offense and organization. Now next year, instead of there being a tint of optimism like there was this year getting Caleb, now there's going to be a sort of a sense of a bit of pessimism of people. Is Caleb the guy? Is this Bears? Are they ever going to be able to get out of the mud? Now you got to get a new head coach in, and he's going to have a big job to turn the narrative around. The Bears owners apparently aren't people that like to splash the cash too much. So are they going to spend money on a good coach, or are they just going to go for a middle of the road coach like they did with Eberflus? I don't think there was too many people knocking on Eberflus's door to be the coach, but the Bears, with the salary they were offering, that was only sort of able to get that caliber of coach. Yeah. So now it's a big off season for them. And do you really trust the Bears management to pick the right coach, to pick the right staff? I mean based
not
on
going off past results,
no. You would say no. And this is a big one. If this coach fails and this OC fails, well, people will blame the coach, but they will also blame Caleb Williams. And you can't afford to lose another number one pick. If this Caleb goes bust and he doesn't work out, man, what else are you going to do? Caleb was one of the best prospects in years. Yes, he has some flaws, but compared to this year's draft class or the previous year's draft class, he's probably one of the most highly touted. So if you waste him by picking another coach that's not the right one, especially an offensive coordinator that's not the right one, it could go real downhill for these Bears. You spent all these monies on offense, you drafted a wide receiver within the top 10, when you probably should have drafted an offensive lineman to protect your quarterback. We've spoken many times how the offensive line is way more important than weapons. Yeah. Obviously you need effective weapons, but those weapons are irrelevant if you don't have someone to protect your quarterback. It's probably a sad day to be a Bears fan, because I think a lot of Bears fans would have been saying, get rid of Eberflus before this year. They bought in because they wanted to believe that Williams was the saviour. But at the end of the day, a rookie QB in the NFL cannot overcome poor management. So, yeah. One sec.
Do you want me to open up the
Get him out? Otherwise... Okay.
Love Obi.
Sorry about that.
Love Obi.
Yeah, Obi's... But what do you think? What's your...
Well, I'm kind of like... My thoughts are, prior to this season, as you said, the fan base bought in, and I feel like Caleb... The past few weeks has really helped him, I would say. Like, the start wasn't performing well. Then they changed out that OC that they've currently got. And then what's that been, like 3 or 4 games now?
Better, yeah.
So he's looked better there. I think that helps him. That helps is he good or is he bad? But so I think whoever they bring in, I haven't even heard who they're looking at to replace him with. But I feel like no matter what, they're still going to get the comments of, these Bears can make the playoffs. They can make a run. So I don't think it hurts Caleb that much. Probably the best thing for him, to be honest.
The best thing would have been to...
The best thing would have been, obviously, but they didn't do that. So this is probably the next best option.
Yeah. You couldn't stick with him, Eberflus. He's a defensive guy. You need an offensive guy.
Yeah.
Caleb. You've literally spent all your money and picks on capital on offense. Get a high-level offensive coach to make use of
Yeah.
it. Otherwise, why the hell are you doing it? It's one thing to get a Ferrari, but if you don't have the ability to drive, it's just a Ferrari. You've got to, if you're going to get all these weapons on offense, Caleb Williams, Roma Duze, DJ Moore, you've got to make use of them. Keenan Allen, you need an OC that can scheme up, that can create plays to get Caleb in the game, to get him flowing. He's got an interesting, intricate play style, a lot of movement. Yeah. He's not great in the pocket. You need someone that can unlock him to play his best and to develop into a high-level NFL QB. Yeah. You can't just walk in and say, hey, Caleb, good luck. Or just the scheming, especially the previous OC, was just awful. You could just tell he wasn't comfortable. They were taking away his strongest assets and trying to turn him into someone that he's not. Yeah. Recently, as you said, he's looked better because he's been allowed to be more free-flowing. And against the Lions, he looked good. Yeah. He looked good in that Lions game. I mean, he drove them down the field.
At least the second half, yeah.
Especially the second half. But in a way, it's kind of better. You want a QB that's good in the second half. That can make adjustments, that can come back. Yeah. The first half is sort of more, the first quarter is a lot of scheming. So he did what he needed to do. He got them in field goal position, and it's not up to the rookie QB to call a timeout there. It's up to the coaching staff. Their coach is a DC. He's a defensive guy. He's not sitting there scheming the offense. All he has to worry about is the clock. And he failed that. So
that's what Caleb said at the end, right? Like, he was saying, like, I didn't get the call to do the timeout, but he was saying, if I'm, a couple more years into the league, I'll probably make that call myself.
Job. If that's a 5th year, 6-year QB, okay, you make the call.
They could probably do it themselves.
Caleb, primetime game. He's playing well. He's driving the field. There's still enough time. It's not like he was 15 seconds left. It's like, okay, we need a timeout. There's still like 30 seconds, which is like, you think you have enough time, but you don't realize how quick that goes down when you're trying to organize things. The coach should have realized, okay, we're taking a sack, call a timeout. We still got 30 seconds. Yes, we'll have no timeouts left, but at least then we can just take a breath, figure out what we want to do, get a short throw to the sideline, or just go for a long field goal. Like, there's plenty of options they had. The one thing you couldn't do was let all that time drain off and literally end the game with the spare timeout. I mean, it was with the worst case scenario. As I said, anyone who plays Madden for 20 minutes would understand that was the wrong thing to do. Yeah. And you can't survive that as a coach, especially when you already had all this, the Damocles sword hanging over your head. So he had to go. Yeah. Bears fans in for another off-season of who's we going to sign, who we're not going to sign. The management has to sign someone that gives that team optimism. You can't sign someone that fans are already out on. Maybe Ben Johnson or something.
If I'm a Bears fan, I'm hoping it's just interim stuff at the moment, just to end this season, and then the off seasons where they make those big calls, because they'll obviously, like, head coach needs to be replaced, but maybe the higher ups as well need to be replaced as well.
But it's hard to replace those ones.
It's hard to replace those ones.
As I said, I don't know too much, but I think the Bears ownership is one of those ownerships that's like a long family thing. It's not like they're not a new ownership that's really ingrained with how the ins and outs of the current NFL works, like the Eagles franchise or the Niners or these franchises or the Broncos that are really up to date with how a modern NFL franchise needs to run. Like, the Bears are similar to the Bengals, where they've had an owner that's owned the team for a long time. They're a bit outdated. They're not up with the times of how this goes. So they delegate to the sort of middle management level who are themselves just trying to do their job and get promoted. And so it creates a really strange hierarchy. So I don't have a lot of confidence, to be honest, in the Bears hiring the right guys, but you just have to hope, if you're a Bears fan, that when the rumors start coming out of who they're interviewing, you start to see the names you want to see, which is maybe a Vrabel would be great. I don't know if Vrabel would want to go there, but he's obviously a defensive guy, but you trust him to create a culture and understand who the good OCs are to bring good OC in. Yeah. Effectively, you need an offensive mind, either in the head coach or the offensive coordinator, that is a high-level guy with a lot of optimism around him that fans can buy into, that you have trust in. I said Ben Johnson is probably the number one offensive guy on the market at the moment that you'd be looking for. So, Vrabel, I doubt Johnson will probably want a head coaching job, but if Vrabel, Johnson as OC, that would be perfect, but I don't know if they have the money to get that. So, again, it'll be interesting to see where they go, what they look for. I just hope, for Bears fans' sakes, that the coach is someone that they can be excited about, because you don't want another year of going into the season with every the fans questioning every decision and just that toxic environment where you don't like your coach, you don't like your OC, everyone's questioning. It's not conducive to winning. And obviously what matters is on the field. You need a play caller that can scheme up correctly and get the best out of Caleb, get the best out of these weapons. But if you don't have that optimism around the building, around the fan base, around the franchise as a whole, that does bleed into the play and bleed into the way that what happens on the field. So it all works in unison together.
Just take your time, be articulate with your choices, and just fingers crossed they actually pick the right guy.
Yeah, well, I said that if based on past history, you'd give them no chance because they've gone through coaches and OCs like crazy the last 5 or 6 years, and they've all been failures, and they keep picking more ones and the problem is they keep digging the hole.
Surely 6, 7, or 8 times the charm, right? Though
the first thing to do when you're in a hole is to stop digging. For some reason, the Bears, whenever they're in a hole, they think if they just keep digging, they'll get to the other side, they'll get out. It hasn't worked. They should have fired Eberflus before this year. New QB, new outlook on the franchise. Get rid of the coach. Let's start afresh. No, they didn't do that. Even though they've had that exact same situation done previously with Fields. He comes in. You could have fired the coach before. You didn't. You fired him after year 1. Then Eberflus comes in. You get rid of Fields to bring in a new QB. Do you get rid of Eberflus? No, you make the same mistake. You keep him, and now you fired him after the first year of Caleb. So they seem to not be able to learn from their mistakes. You're just praying, if you're a Bears fan, that this is the one time it sticks in their head that they've got to pivot and get a high-level coach that's up with the times in terms of the way the league is moving, offensive-minded guy who's a Ben Johnson style, and just hope that things start working out because if this doesn't work out with all these weapons and stuff on offense, it's just what is.
Yeah. I mean, do we just go in today's slate from there?
Yeah. Talk about any of the games today?
I mean, what do we have today? Early games. I think the highlight early game was probably Steelers and Bengals, I would say.
Steelers, Bengals.
That was just an absolute offensive powerhouse game.
High-level franchises. Yeah. Steelers, as the underdogs, ended up winning outright.
Yep. Which turned into an absolute shootout. I think there was, 82 points or something in total.
Steelers give up a pick 6 on their first drive. You're thinking, wow, this is if you're the Steelers, this is probably the worst way because you had to think that you're not going to... You were going into the game, you're probably questioning if the Steelers offense could keep up with the Bengals offense.
Yeah.
So to give the Bengals a free 7 points to start with, oh gosh.
Probably the worst start that they could have done.
Literally the worst start.
Yeah.
But then they drove the field, and from that moment on, I mean, Wilson was looking like vintage Russell Wilson. He was dealing and wheeling. He was extending plays. He was making deep balls. It was Najee Harris was going berserk, breaking tackles in the receiving game as well. So their offense had probably looked the best it's looked in, I mean, I'd say years. And their defense was just probably the difference. For me, the Steelers' defense is clearly better than the Bengals' defense, and 100%. They were able to make plays. The Bengals' defense wasn't able to make plays. They were leaking everywhere. The Bengals' offense was able to obviously keep them in the game, but the Steelers' defense was able to get interceptions. They were able to pressure Burrow, get the sacks, get them turnovers, the fumbles.
When you got TJ Watt, that's just too easy.
The Bengals have no one like him.
Yeah, like the Bengals' defense, I think they've been giving up like 34, 35 plus points like the past couple of weeks.
It's ridiculous,
like, it's just too much points for... They do have a powerhouse of an offense, but they just can't keep up with it.
That's a franchise that is, just fell in love with their offensive weapons and thought they were good enough to carry, and they forgot that defense is just as, if not more important than your offense.
I mean, yeah, you look at Lions and Eagles, just goes to show how much of a balanced team both of them are. And yeah.
So, the reason why Chiefs won the Super Bowl last year is their defense.
Yeah.
Like, defense wins championships. It's cliche, but defense will keep you in games. So the offense won't perform every week. Your defense will keep you in those games. It'll get you wins when you don't play your best. And ultimately, if you have a good defense, if your offense plays great, you should win. Like in the NFL, if your offense gets 40 points or 35 points, you should win nearly every one of those games.
Yeah.
How many times this year have the Bengals scored 35, 30 plus and lost? It's so unsustainable, and it must go the attitude throughout the whole team must be like just one of like the offense must be so annoyed at the defense. They feel like they're doing all this, but yet the offense is also going to get criticized because ultimately they're losing. Burrow's one of the highest paid QBs. He's got all this reputation, hype behind him, and yet he's 4 in whatever. Like they're probably going to miss the playoffs. T. Higgins, probably his last year for the Bengals, is going to miss the playoffs. Jamar Chase, supposed to be the best wide receiver in the game, going to miss the playoffs. And they know it's because the defense has let them down. So how does that dynamic work in the locker room? That's going to create friction. So it must be and it just must keep snowballing. Like snowballing every week seems to be the exact same thing happening. Yeah. And then on the flip side, you have the Steelers who, I mean, probably with the Ravens loss today, I mean, you'd have to nearly lock the division up. They won. They beat the Ravens. So they have the tiebreaker at the moment. I think they play again later, but so that'll be a big game. But at the moment, of course, the Ravens are always capable of going on a run, and you keep expecting the Steelers to fall over, but they seem to just keep on going. And with their offense playing like this, you have to, and obviously their defense will always be good with TJ Watt and just being that defensive culture of a team.
Yeah.
They're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. If their offense again, the danger is their offense just hits a brick wall and Russell Wilson throws 2 picks and they just can't get anything going and they struggle. They score 13 points in a playoff. But if they can get home field advantage, if they can win their division, get home field to at least the conference final game, then they're going to be tough. Playing in the wild card round and the divisional round in Pittsburgh, they're going to be a tough out. That their crowd's going to be behind them. Their defense is going to be hyped up. Their offense is playing with a lot of confidence, and we're still a few weeks out from the playoffs. But at the moment, unless you can, this offense confidence get knocked around and they start, losing a bit of the connection they have. Because at the moment, the Pickens to Wilson connection looks great. Najee Harris is playing great. The offensive line protecting Wilson. Wilson's making plays. He's looked the best he's looked in years. So everything is looking very bright for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and it's even brighter in Buffalo now. MVP of Josh Allen. Looks like he's running away with it.
With Lamar's just lost too many games, I think, getting to the point where he can't win it.
Yeah.
I think, obviously, Saquon, I'd say, between Saquon and Allen.
How many times does a running back usually get that
not
sort
since
of
Adrian Peterson,
pip on the...
Long time. So it's usually a QB award. And if the Bills keep winning, it's game over. If the Bills only say, I reckon they can probably lose one more. If they only lose one more, then it's Allen will win. I said this previously in one of the last pods we did, that Allen started this year with a head start. And Saquon, if he breaks the rushing record, like all-time rushing record, maybe. I think he'll probably have to do that to get the MVP. But at the moment, you just, based on history of it being a QB award, you'd give it to Allen. Yeah. And just the fact that he's carrying that team to it. Everyone thought the Bills wouldn't even win their division this year, and they're going to look like they probably maybe get the number 1 seed. Yeah. So he's overachieved. Yeah. Clearly, he needs to get to the Super Bowl.
You look at those stats, and he's probably, been shorted a couple of touchdowns because of the Hurts tush pushes. Yeah. Obviously, at the 1 or 2 yard line in the red zone. So, how many touchdowns does he have? Probably 13 or 14 or something. And so he could have easily get those numbers up. So, he's just looking like an absolute powerhouse. But, Josh Allen today, they blew out the 49ers. It was basically a Buffalo game from the start. The weather, it was covered in snow at the start. They had all the volunteers come in and rake it all up. And, it's just in that sort of weather, they kind of thrive in that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but you look at the stats, it wasn't that... the stats don't indicate a blowout. The yards, I think Buffalo had 100 extra total yards. The time of possession was pretty even. The biggest thing was the 3 fumbles.
Special teams and stuff like that as well.
And losing the fumbles from the 49ers. 49ers is not a team playing with confidence. They're a team that's offensively look good in patches but can't finish. They have to keep settling for field goals. They get in good positions and lose the ball. They're just a team that's always... The last few years have had poor special teams, and that comes back to bite you. Especially, it doesn't bite you that much when your offense is buttoned up and everything's working and you're finishing off your drives with touchdowns and you're not turning the ball over. But when your offense isn't playing to a high level, you need your special teams to just not cost you. And at the moment, they're costing, which is not working. Their defense is not what it used to be. Basically, all their offense, defense, special teams are all just regressing a little bit, and collectively, that's causing what you've seen this season. When I heard that Purdy was playing today, I thought, okay, they got a chance, but obviously it didn't matter. The Bills were just too good defensively, too good offensively, and the Niners, what a fall from grace. Everyone thought that this year was probably their last year of their Super Bowl window, but it's looking like last year was it, and that Super Bowl loss was it for them.
It's going to hurt them.
Yeah, that's a thing. We said it earlier with the Swans. Losing in the Super Bowl, the grand final, whatever it is, hurts more than any other loss, obviously. Yeah. But it's because you know how close you were. You're at the finish line. You play all year. You know how hard it is. You have to survive injuries, luck. You have to put it all together across... in the NFL, it's a tough physical sport. It's 17 weeks plus playoffs. In our leagues, NRL's 26 weeks. That's a lot of physical, just week on week playing. Your best players can get injured. There's so many things that can go wrong. You have to create a culture that buys in together and does the whole season on the road. And to get that close in the final, especially with the Niners who have been there before and lost in the Super Bowl, it just stings. And I think that they're playing like a team that's just ran out of energy, ran out of juice. They have a lot of the same players. Obviously, Ayuk going down hurt them, but they have a lot of the same players from last year. Yeah. But I just think they're just all a year older. Mentally, they've aged. I think they just feel that burden of just getting so close and losing again. So for me, I think the Niners won't make the playoffs this year, it's looking like. And they have some big decisions to make.
Yeah.
I think you've got to get rid of Debo. He's past it. He's not worth the price tag. He's no longer that Swiss Army knife. Kittle's still playing well, but he's getting older. Trent Williams, you just re-signed him. He's like been your main weapon as an offensive lineman. He's been your run game, your pass protection, but he's getting a bit older. You know, do you sign Purdy? What do you sign him for? Do you give him a big contract? Do you give him a smaller contract? Do you just wait a year? That could create some friction. You know, he's only on $1 million a year. He's going to want some money for all the, got him to a Super Bowl. He deserves some sort of financial reward. Defensively, they clearly need some more help. But what do? McCaffrey looks like he's got injured again today. Looks like as a running back, he might be at the end of his tenure. Those injuries are finally catching up to him. So they've got holes everywhere, and they're paying a lot of money to certain players, and I don't think they'll be able to pivot. They should not have paid Ayuk. That was a shocking decision. That was a decision they made, I think, in desperation of thinking this was the year. We need him to get back to the Super Bowl and make sure we win it this year.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it was the wrong decision because it's effectively going to give them less money to maneuver.
I think the McCaffrey situation as well, McCaffrey wasn't going to be there for the first, I think it was 4 weeks at the start, but it ends up being like 6 or 7. But yeah, I think they kind of, like you said, just got pressured into it, saw what the team was at the moment, thought, maybe they thought this could be our last one, so they just had to throw everything at it.
It plays with your mind. When you get to the grand final, when you get to the Super Bowl, it plays with your mind. It's like, oh, we were so close. If we just stick with it, if we just do one more year with the experience, if we just get everyone back, we can do it.
Yeah.
But I think it's sort of a bit of optimistic thinking where you want it to be the case. You want to believe you can do it again, but you forget how much goes into it, and that sometimes you just need to cut your losses and go, okay, we didn't make it this year. Let's not sign Ayuk. Let's get a young receiver in. Let's try to save some money in other areas so that when these players are off contract, we have some money to pivot elsewhere. But instead, they've locked themselves into sort of this current iteration of aging players. And you see this, what happens when teams struggle to sort of let go of being one of the best teams, they end up causing that transition to the next phase to go extra 2 or 3 years longer and cause a lot of pain rather than just being able to do a quick pivot to what's next. Like you saw the Chiefs. They could have re-signed Tyreek Hill and locked them in to that offensive juggernaut. Would they have won the last 2 Super Bowls? Maybe, maybe not. But there's one thing for sure, is the Chiefs right now are probably in a better position moving forward because they don't have all that money tied up in sort of the more fancy, exuberant positions, and they can spend more money on corners, on safeties, on offensive linemen, being able to pay Chris Jones, like the positions that don't get the headlines but really matter. They're able to spend more money on that and to get their defense to a high level, which keeps them in the games even when their offense isn't looking good. On the flip side, you have the Niners who are spending all this money on offense, on Ayuk, on Debo Samuel, on McCaffrey, on Kittle, on these players that are weapons but don't, which look good and get the headlines, but don't actually contribute as much to winning as your offensive line, your defensive line, your safeties, your corners. Now, all the players that don't get all the accolades, but collectively is what leads to a winning team. And the Niners have sort of not forgotten that, but have put more of a priority on the skill position guys who are older and not able to produce as much and getting injured and missing weeks. And it's causing... Well, it's going to cause a lot of pain in the short term.
I remember Brady coming out and saying, like, he would take less pay so he had more weapons around him. Like, he's been open about that. So, but I don't know if Pat does sort of the similar...
Pat's taking a bit less money.
Yeah, not seems like the guy that would.
Yeah, but then you have the QBs like Dak, who's taken the highest, Trevor that took like...
Yeah.
There seems to be a weird trend in the NFL right now where QBs seem to think that the next person to sign the contract has to get the next most, right? So the current highest is $59 million a year. Okay, I'm the next QB up. I'm going to get $60 million a year. I'm the next. I'm going to get $62 million a year. It's like you got to keep upping.
Feels like there's always an inflation that has to happen.
But it's like at the end of the day, okay, it's easy for us to say because we're not the one signing the contract.
Yeah.
But $50 million versus $60 million, like at the end of the day, what are you playing football for? Are you playing it only for the money, or are you playing to win, to put your name in lights, to get your banner up there, to create legacy, to create memories, to... at the end of the day, when you hear these old players talk about their days, they don't talk about how much money they made. They talk about their memories of winning Super Bowls, of the great moments together, of these great teams we had.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of players are getting stuck in the cycle of sort of money over everything. I'm going to get the highest contract I possibly can. I think managers probably have stuff to do with that. They have a strong incentive to get a higher contract, they get more commission. But at the end of the day, I think there is definitely something to be said for players who take a little less and prioritize team performance and team, like,
for sure,
chemistry and just getting the right players together to create that winning culture. Because I think ultimately it leads to more happiness. It leads to better sense of like with your teammates, you know you're sharing some of the money, you're sharing some of the love. And I said it's easy for us to say because we're not the ones having to forgo $10 million on a contract.
Surely there's other below-the-line incentives as well, a part of that sort of stuff that sort of can balance it out in that sort of aspect as well.
And I think as well, it's in the NFL, it's a sort of like I think there's a mentality of you've got to get your money now because it's such a physical sport. You don't know when injury's going to hit. You might just play a game and get an Achilles injury and that's it. Your career's over. So there's sort of an incentive where I need to get everything I can in this contract and as much guaranteed as I possibly can to save myself moving forward, which I totally understand and respect. But at the end of the day, and if you're like a player that's only getting 5 million, you know, if you can get up to 10 million, go ahead. I'm more talking at the highest level of the market, the QBs who are just pushing the 50 to 60 million. Like if you, instead of signing for 60, you sign for 50. That extra 10 million could be the difference between getting 2 excellent corners versus 2 average corners, which might save you across a season. That might save you, 2 or 3 games of, instead of the other team scoring 30 points, they score 20 points. You win those games, 3 extra wins, and then all of a sudden you're the number 2 seed, you're playing at home, more revenue for your team. If fans get a home game, you might make a Super Bowl, you might win a Super Bowl. Like, these are all what-ifs. But I think across, like Dak Prescott signing that contract, Cowboys are stuffed. I don't think they're going to make a Super Bowl while Dak's there because he's earning the top dollar, and he's a player, quality-wise, that is probably, I'd say, mid-tier, upper mid-tier quarterback. You just can't do it. You're overvaluing him because of the position and because he had all the leverage in the negotiating because he had he withdrew the franchise, he got through the franchise tag and all that. And as a result, the Cowboys are locked in and financially they're not going to be able to pivot. They're going to have to pay Micah. They're going to have to pay, they already paid CD. You're not going to be able to afford the lesser known positions like corner and safety and linebacker, offensive line. And as a result, they're going to decrease in quality, and that's going to hurt your overall team more than it would if you just got a QB with less money.
That's what we're talking about, players and coaches, but franchises that have this like really solid sort of management with a business mind, like they can thrive just as good as any like solid team on the field.
I think it's probably just as more important. I think in the modern day, with the amount of money that's being thrown around, it's very easy just to let a manager negotiate a great
splash
deal for
of
a
cash
player. It's like, oh, who cares? We're making all this money. Give him that money. We need a QB. We don't want to lose him. I think strong management is like you see it with the Chiefs. You see it with the Eagles. You see it with certain teams. Like, why are they always up there? Why is when they pivot away from a QB or they have to make a big change, why are they still within 1 year back to winning? Like, it's because the way that they're behind the scenes, the things you don't see, the things that the more nitty gritty management analytical side of it, that is not just in NFL, but I think in every sport nowadays. You see it in the NRL, you see it with the Storm, the Roosters, the teams that are run well with intelligence, with a bit of foresight, the ability to understand trends and the way things are going rather than being reactionary. You're looking forwards and how you can go with the wind. That is the most invaluable skill to have. And it's going to... Doesn't matter if you had Patrick Mahomes in a franchise with a poor coach and a team that just is spending the money in the wrong positions. Like you got a Tyreek Hill there, but your offensive line is awful. Or you have an excellent offense like the Bengals, but your defense is awful. Like there's a reason why you see the teams like Bengals and Bears that keep struggling year on year, even though they have a side of the ball like the offense or a particular player like Burrow, who is one of the top in the top of the league, is because it's NFL more than any other is a collective. So many moving parts. You have 50-something man roster, 52, 51 man roster.
Yeah.
You have tens of 50 or so coaches, I'd say, collectively or overall. There's so many things going on. It's a massive organization, and you need management, strong management from the very top all the way down. Otherwise, it just breaks down. You see with the Jets, why are the Jets always at the bottom? They sign all these players, and it just doesn't change anything because effectively at the top, trickle that sort of just inability to make the right decisions at the top level trickles all the way down to the lowest levels, and you see it on the field, and that's sort of like what the fans see, but you don't realize that what the poor form we see on the field is effectively from the decisions made all the way at the top early on.
Yeah.
So I 100% agree with you that I think the coaching and the general manager and the general manager relationship with the owner is probably the most important element of a successful sports franchise. There is. I mean, one more example is Man City. From the top down, it's all integrated. There's a reason why they've been able to be at the top of the game for that long. Yes, have the money, but they spend that money wisely. The right coach, the right sort of chairman, the right general manager, they put it all together, and that results in the right team being on the field, and the right team leads to positive results, and that's what you need.
I mean, do you want to pivot to that, or do you want to go through BS picks right now?
Yeah, let's go through the picks.
Go through picks? Alrighty, who wants to go first?
Oh, you go first.
Me? Alrighty, so my 5 for the week. My first one was Texans at -3.5.
Pain.
This was a painful one. I was, wiping my hands at the fourth quarter. I was like, got this one. And, Stroud just has a soft performance overall. And I would say Mac Jones was probably the best QB on field,
Crazy,
which is saying something.
Yeah, that was an interesting pick from you. I think the Texans are so overvalued this year. They're just not as good as they were last year.
No.
Stroud's not the same guy. The team's not the same. I'd be very hesitant to bet on them in any game moving forward.
Nah, well, I'm definitely not betting on them next week. Well, they got a bye, so that helps.
That does help.
But yeah, I think
it's still a bad beat.
Yeah, their secondary just has a lot of questions that they just need to address, at least going into the bye, if they want to try and hold this first seed in the division. They've got Colts on their heels. They scraped out a win against the Pats today, so they closed the gap there. Well, no, it didn't close the gap. Texans still won, but I feel like it could be interesting coming down to the last couple of weeks, like whether Texans or Colts could flip. So,
They still play again, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that'll be a big game.
Yeah, so that was a bad beat. So I'm already on one on that start. But then my next one was Seahawks minus a half against the Jets. I mean, from the moment Rodgers threw that pick six,
it was game over, wasn't it?
Jets had nothing else to give except
over.
Penalties.
Yeah.
That's all they could give was penalties.
Awful.
4th and 1 with the horse collar. That just didn't help. It's just poor.
Just a bad team.
Poor execution with a bad team. I mean, you'll bring it up on your side, but I was so shocked when you sent that text through.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked too.
I was shocked. I was like, I'm positive this bloke said that he's going to fade the Jets every single week when it comes up.
Should have.
So yeah, I'll love to hear your thoughts, like what you thought before then. But then my next one was Titans plus 5.5. I mean, usually I've got my go-to saying, don't bet on a bad quarterback, and I still went with them. It just looked like Commanders sort of found that early form again. Titans defense has usually been pretty good. But they just had no...
Titans are the best defense in the league.
Yeah, and they just had no answer for Daniels. It was just like a Daniels get right spot, basically. There was a lot of talk about Cliff Kingsbury and like how his offenses usually tend to start really well early, and then they start to like drift off. So that was in my head when I was looking at it, and I was just like, kind of the spot to go in, especially coming off that loss to Dallas the week before. So, but yeah, that one didn't end up working out. What else? My next one was Steelers plus 2.5. So I got that one. We already spoke about it. Basically, getting a great spot off the loss to the Browns for the Steelers. And it turns into a good weekend because Ravens lose. So
Huge.
They're kind of flying high. And then my fifth one, which rounds me out to 3-2 on the week, is the Cardinals plus 3.5, which ends up getting pretty close towards the end, where
lucky one.
Kind of thought Cardinals should have. They're probably disappointed they don't come out with a win there, especially now that the Seahawks won their game and Rams won their game as well this week. So
it's a bad 2 weeks for the Cardinals.
Yeah, the fight for the divisional title in the NFC West will probably come down to the last week, I would say.
I think they will have to play each other, so that'll probably be the divisional games will be the determining factor in there.
Yeah, so 3-2.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, can't complain.
So yeah, I had similar Cardinals plus 3. I just thought the Cardinals have to bounce back from their poor performance last week, and they did. Obviously, landed on the 3, so that was a good win. I had the Titans as well, plus I just thought the Titans' defense would be able to continue Jaden's struggles, but Jaden played better than he had previous weeks and overcame that. So that's 1-1. I had the Jets. Weird pick. This was probably my last one. Like I was like trying to decide. I wanted to go Carolina, but I said I can't pick Carolina over bloody Bucks. Bucks will. It's a bad spot.
I thought you might have even put the Steelers in because
I was thinking Steelers, but I was just worried. I thought that was a good spot for the Bengals. I thought only it was +3. I probably would have, but the -2.5 was like, oh, Bengals at home, literally season on the line. I just thought this would be a time where they score 35 and Steelers score 28 and they win, but clearly the Steelers offense was better than I gave them credit for. And I also wanted to pick the Pats over the +2 of the Colts, which would have hit as well. So unfortunately, the 3 I was looking at would have all won.
Yeah.
But I was convinced on the Jets just by apparently the pros really liked them. It was a spot at home. They have looked obviously really poor, but this was a get-right spot for them where they had to sort of everything on the line. I mean, you lose this, things just keep snowballing, getting worse. So I bought into that, and obviously that was in hindsight, should have trusted myself and not gone with that one. I did the Chargers over.
I pick them half a point over Falcons.
Yeah, I think the Chargers are a much better team than the Falcons.
Yeah.
I mean, the Chargers lost last week against the Ravens, but they played really well. I think the Chargers is just honestly a playoff team. They're a good team, and I don't think the Falcons are a playoff team. And I think Kirk Cousins is coming to the end of his rope. And then my last one was the Ravens -2.5. For me, it's an auto play whenever Lamar's under 3. I just played that. They started out all right, but then the offense just stalled in that second half. It's a bad trend for the Ravens where in the second half, they just for some reason, in some games, they just can't get anything going. Obviously, it didn't help that Tucker missed 2 field goals, and that meant that they didn't trust him later on. They had to go for some bad 4th down plays. But credit to the Eagles. They started off slow, but they're built into the game like they usually do. They ran well. Hurts barely had to throw it. Yeah. They just grinded it out. They just out-grinded the Ravens, which is something that typically doesn't happen, especially the last few years, a bit more this year. But, yeah, I just thought Lamar in a -2.5. I thought Eagles were due a letdown spot. They're on a massive win streak. I thought this was the time it would come. And not too many regrets picking that one. I'd probably pick him again. The only regret I have is obviously the Jets. I should have picked any of those other 3 I was talking about. I was going to put them in there. And the Titans, I thought that was a pretty good play. I don't regret that one either. So I think I went 2 and 3 in the week. That's on me. Definitely should have gone 3 and 2. But yeah, we live and we learn.
Yeah, so after week 13, I'm 15 and 10. 60% is not too bad. I mean, you're only just one behind, 14 and 11. So still respectable. I'd say like the 55 to 60 is pretty average bang on. Anything above 60 is probably extraordinary.
Oh, no, 100%. Yeah, 60 against the spread. That's great.
So I think we're doing pretty well. And I mean, next week, we won't be doing the Friday pod as we said, but we'll do our picks on TikTok. So follow the Borderless Sports TikTok.
Follow us on TikTok. Follow us on the talk, and we'll
be giving out our best 5.
Yep.
Jeez, what do we move to now?
Just finish with some Prem.
Anything
else?
We haven't touched on Formula 1 either.
Oh, it's getting hot in here, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's go to EPL.
All right.
Let's go to EPL.
Sure, I did want to talk about the F1 as well. Bloody hell.
Liverpool.
Yeah, they won.
Beat Man City 2-0.
Wasn't really close, was it? They were the better team.
Nah.
City barely had any chances.
First half was basically all with us, I would say.
Yeah.
We had all the chances there. I think your best chance came after half time, really. Haaland had that one-on-one. I mean, Kelleher, all credit to him. Beautiful stop, great positioning. He's just outperforming, even with, Alisson not there. We're keeping clean sheets against these top teams like Man City.
No, he's a great keeper. I heard someone say he's probably the best second keeper in the league.
I think now it's going to be tough to try and keep him because, other teams will be looking for him.
He's not going to be a backup.
Nah, but, I mean, talking about keepers, your keeper got dropped. Edison, yeah. So Ortega comes in.
Kind of, we have much bigger problems than the keeper. Yeah. Our problem, as you saw, before that Salah penalty goal, Salah had 2 one-on-ones in the 5 minutes before that because we just kept... Bernardo Silva turned it over, Lewis turned it over, Walker turned it over. We're not the same team. As we keep... Typically, City, you can't get the ball of us in midfield. We just build it up, and yes, we might turn it over in the attacking third, and most goals we could see the previous years was us turning it over in the attacking third and then the other team getting a quick counter-attack and one-on-one and they'd score. This year, we're turning it over in the midfield, we're turning it over everywhere, we're looking just unbalanced.
Yeah.
And said Salah really should have scored 2 goals before he got the penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe Salah missed those, especially that first one-on-one. I mean, man, literally one-on-one with the keeper. Salah buries those 90% of the time, and he kicked it over the bar. Just shows that even the best, missed those, some easy ones. But yeah, you guys were the better team. I should have bet on Liverpool. It was pretty even odds going into it.
It was $2 for Liverpool to win, right?
Yeah, it was a bit more, about 220, I think.
A bit more.
And yeah, I think Liverpool is the better team. Now you're 11 points clear at the top.
11 from you, but 9 from Arsenal.
True, so we're third now. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
So this is probably the most pressure.
I think you're 4th, actually. I think Chelsea's jumped you as well.
The most pressure City has been under, probably in the Pep era. So our longest win streak in over a decade, lost streak, in over a decade. Things, I wonder how they're going to turn it around. It's not as if I think it's an easy fix. It seems to be a bit systemic.
Pep's come out and said, reset button style, so...
Yeah, I feel like
you've never had to do that before, though.
No, well, I don't know how you reset it. I mean,
yeah,
a lot of the players are going to stay the same. It's not as if we have, obviously we have great depth, but we don't have a whole squad to replace them with. So yeah, it's a weird time in the Prem. I don't want to say the changing of the guard, because at the end of the day, we still have Pep, we still have the same team, same financial backing. I feel like it's more of a blip than a full on. But it's a big blip. It's the biggest blip in probably a decade. So it's definitely something. It's not nothing. But I don't think you don't want to overreact and say it's like the end of City. But it's for this year, I don't think they're going to be able to turn it around this year. I think it's a next year off season. We need to shift how we do things leading into the season. I think losing Rodri, I think playing deep in all the comps and sort of just being a bit fatigued mentally, it's probably leading to a poor preseason. Is all contributing to it. I think we've been at the top for so long, that little mental fatigue. I think maybe a season like this will do us good, so we can have a mental reset and just go into the next season with a new mentality, a bit more of a chip on our shoulder rather than feeling like we've accomplished everything. Obviously, I don't want to sign away this season too early. Still a long way left. Got to get through the Christmas period.
We're not even third way through the season yet.
I know, but it's a pretty big gap. And Liverpool are looking... They're looking good. They're looking...
Yeah. But I know what you're about to say. Coming in the festive period, those schedules are brutal. There's
injuries
so many
happen. Yeah, you can get
injuries, bad form. I mean, just so much stuff can happen. So it's going to be interesting. We're coming down to, I think, the later group stage games in Champions League as well. So once those
look poor in the Champions League, too.
Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, the biggest news that came out of that match today was Liverpool with you're going to get sacked in the morning chants, throwing out some banner. All the media's making a whole fuss about it, but it's just banner between two teams that have.
You haven't been able to do that.
It's always been a push-pull sort of matchup. I think Pep's basically 50%.
But you haven't won in a while. It's been a few years since you've won. I think 2 years.
No, I think there's always been a lot of draws. That's what I thought there was going to be a draw today, but but it's been a push and pull matchup. Where we've got that respect for Pep. Pep's got that respect for us. He knows this is probably his toughest matchup. I would probably say us versus you is probably the toughest matchup.
Sure, definitely last 5 years.
You could argue maybe Arsenal, but I wouldn't say so.
No, not yet. I'd say the biggest thing as well, though, is the mentality shift. You guys now are going to start feeling the pressure. You were hunting. Now you're going to be the hunted. Winning this game, that sort of internal pressure too, you're going to feel like it's now yours to lose. That changes things. City's so far behind now that it's not really they're on our heels, we've got to keep going. It's more, okay, we've got a gap now. That's going to play on your mind. It's going to be interesting to see how they block that out.
We've struggled being the hunted before. We won
in the
COVID era, but we were being hunted then, but it's a different game. When you're not playing in front of crowds and stuff like that.
We're only just started December. There's a lot of Prem to play.
Yeah.
And that's a long time to keep your medal about you and not fall into a slump. And suddenly, because, once a slump starts, it's hard to get out of because it's sort of it snowballs. So, obviously, as long as you guys keep winning, everything's going to be sweet and rosy. But
so it's...
Will you be able to keep it up for the rest of the year?
Exactly. Does the penny eventually drop?
You're one Van Dijk injury away, or, to be fair, you got enough...
It's happened before.
You got enough sort of depth in your attack. You don't really want to lose Salah because he's that pivot guy.
We've probably got depth in attack and midfield, I would say. Defense is where we can struggle. It's only
You lose a Van Dijk, you guys are in trouble.
Conte or like Virgil go down, that's GG's.
And that's what I'm saying. The December period is when these injuries can happen. I mean, Van Dijk, apart from that one ACL injury, which was not, that was just that was a collision incident. It wasn't like him being injury prone. Injury. He doesn't get injured too much, but he's getting a bit older, and if you need him to be up the entire year. So that's probably at the moment one of the only ways you look like you'll get hurt. But soccer's a funny game. It can turn on you real quick.
And Salah's coming out after the game and saying, this could have been my last matchup against City. So there's always that contract talk now that's sort of starting to ramp up after
You don't need that, do you?
Nah. So that's probably the worst thing that I heard come out.
Just sign him.
Yeah. So I don't know. I get what Salah's doing. You want to bring it up, like he should be getting signed. He's probably in the right too.
One of your greatest ever players.
So, but it's not good when you got probably your best forward coming out and saying that after a win.
Soccer is also different. Like I know I'm sort of contradicting myself to what I was saying before about football, pivoting off old players, but soccer is a lot different to these contact sports like NFL. In NFL, older players, you hit a cliff and you fall off because you just can't take the contact. Your body doesn't recover. In soccer, it's endurance. You have endurance athletes still running into their 40s. Like, yes, he might not be at the highest level, like in the next... Say if he signs a 4-year contract. At the end of that 4th year, yes, he's not going to be the Salah you remember, but he is still going to be a high-level player. And if, say, you get 2.5, 3 years out of him, that's still world class.
Yeah.
That 4th year, he's earned enough reputation and done enough for you that he deserves a year where he might drop down a bit in form and still earning the money that you would at world class.
Yeah.
But he deserves that. Like, what's the problem? Like, it's not as if I don't think he's going to just suddenly 2 years into this contract turn into just a bust and he currently can't start. Like, yes, he might have to come off the bench, might only play 60 minutes, but his presence, his aura will pay for a lot of that wage too. So I think it's ludicrous that they don't pay him. I don't understand you want to be cautious. You don't want to sort of sign someone up who's a bit older and you might want to start to think about the future, and you've got a lot of young guys coming through who you've signed, the Gakpos, Jota and the likes of all them. But at the end of the day, you did the same thing with Suarez. You probably should have kept him. You let him go. Just keep Salah. Let him have one final contract, be the final swan song, and let that be it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the EPL. Let's go into Formula 1.
Yep, Formula 1. Second last race of the year.
Yeah, Max wins the Qatar GP.
Yep.
Kind of it was a battle at the start. We'll get into it. But
good battle with the safety car restart too.
Yeah. Yep. So, really the main topic is the penalty.
Yeah, the Lando Norris penalty. Wow. Look, I think it's a bit of a slam dunk in terms of should there have been a penalty or not. He didn't lift. Double wave yellow. You've got to do it. That's the rule. For me, it's the 10-second stop go. That is up to debate. Maybe some people will disagree, but I think that's way too harsh. I think 10-second stop go was effectively, especially they gave it to him straight after the safety car when the whole field was bunched, which meant that you effectively put him to last.
Yeah.
That is such a strong penalty for... It wasn't if it was like dangerous or there was a car parked. It was because for debris. Like, the safety car should have already been out. It was just a bad situation by the race control. And then to give a 10-second stop-go penalty, Max didn't even get a stop-go penalty when he basically drove Lando off the track a month ago when that just dangerous driving. Remember that race? I think it was way too harsh. I think a 5-second or even a 10-second penalty not stop-go would have been more than sufficient. A 10-second stop-go penalty is nearly as harsh as you can get.
Turns into 30, 35 seconds, doesn't it?
35 seconds as a penalty for failing to stop in a double waved yellow when in a situation that wasn't that dangerous. Like, it seems like such overkill, and it really ruined the race. And for McLaren, it puts him in a hot spot next week.
It does, yeah. It's just touching on that, the IQ play from Max to get on the radio and call it in. Like,
that was... Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't even get, seen if Max doesn't call it in, but, he's got that IQ to... He's seen the flag. He's lifted off,
and he's seen that Lando's caught up to him.
He's looked in his mirrors, saw Lando catches up. So he just puts the word to the team. Team goes, yeah, all right.
Yeah, as I said,
we'll ask the question.
I have no contention with the penalty. Like, he did the wrong thing. He should have done it. Okay,
but you're just talking about the harshness,
the severity of it. The 10-second stop go. You've you'd probably be able to count on one hand how many stop go penalties there've been this year.
Yeah.
And to give a guy a stop go penalty when he's coming second after a safety car, where it's going to, as you said, a 30-second penalty that's going to make him come out last. It's just way too severe for a infringement that wasn't worth the penalty. And this now means that Ferrari have a great chance of overtaking McLaren next week. If Lando would come second, I mean, it's basically over. We're talking about winning the Constructors, which could be decided by the race control giving a penalty. That just seems way over the top. I mean, I think it's a ludicrous decision. People may disagree that, the rule's the rule, but I don't know. For me, it's left a sour taste in my mouth, and I'm not even a Lando fan. Like, I'm not a McLaren fan. I've been outspoken. I don't agree with Lando in a lot of the things he does. But I think in this regard, it was way overdone, and they've taken sort of the race in their own hands here, race control. And I mean, for the viewers, it's great because it means the next race is going to be exciting to see who wins the championship.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be that close. McLaren are going to feel super hard done by.
I'm so confused because they've got these rules in place, but then they look at the situation and they tinker the penalty. Like you even saw after qualifying, obviously Max gets the one grid spot back, but usually it's a 3 or a 5, and so they minimised it because it wasn't a hot lap, but he was still on that racing line. So they're just tinkering with these. There's a lot of discretion. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Why would the fact that there's so much discretion in these penalties? Why would they use that discretion to give the harshest penalty to Lando?
Yeah.
When the infringement wasn't that bad? Like, we've seen way worse infringements throughout the year. Contact, like actual dangerous driving. This is someone who just didn't let his foot off the accelerator down the straight because of a bit of debris. I said it's a different thing if there's a car sitting off to the left. It's like, okay, but it's just a bit of debris on the road. Yes, he did the wrong thing. Give him a 5-second, 10-second penalty. Okay, cool. Got to cop that. But a 30-second stop-go penalty, which, I know it's not 30 seconds, but effectively it is way over the top. And I'll go to my grave believing that. I said I'm happy to listen to anyone who thinks otherwise, but I just think this ruined the race, really. Lando probably could have given Max a run for his money for the lead, maybe. Yeah. I mean, Max had it under control. McLaren probably
had the faster car, I'd say.
You saw after when he was working through the field afterwards that he was at ridiculous pace.
Yeah.
So, it's great for next week's race because it's going to make that very interesting and makes the gap a lot closer.
Yeah.
But it seems a bit artificial to me. You hope that it wasn't done for that reason. Like, you hope that it wasn't done as a, this will be good, let's get Ferrari and sort of make that last race closer, similar Abu Dhabi, Hamilton Max situation. But for me, I struggled to find why they decided to make the penalty a 10-second stop go.
Yeah.
It's like, what other reasoning can you have? And you leave it open for people to speculate that it was done for a commercial reason rather than a sporting reason.
Yeah. I mean, McLaren's probably lucky that Sainz was a part of that debris and he gets the puncture, so that probably.
Well, I was thinking that when that happened, I'm like, man, that debris, the race control's decision not to call a safety car is literally going to cost Ferrari the chance to win the Constructors next week.
Yeah, so it kind of hurt both teams, really.
And then 10 seconds later, or a couple of minutes later, all of a sudden they give Lando the 10-second stop go. Maybe that had something to do with it, the fact that Sainz went over the debris and they were feeling guilty for not calling a safety car. I don't know. It just seems off. As soon as I heard that penalty, even Jenson Button on the commentary was like, he didn't realize it was stop and go. I think he just assumed it was a regular 10-second penalty.
Yeah.
Like, it just seemed like, what? We've barely seen any stop-go penalties this whole year. And there's been infringements for not stopping under double wave yellows. And I don't think that was a stop-go penalty. So, like, why this one in a case where that wasn't even as bad? Like, there wasn't a car. There was no danger to anyone. It was more just a danger to the drivers rather than a danger to anyone else. So, it was very strange all in all. And I do hope McLaren can win the Constructors next week because it would feel quite sour if Ferrari beat them by 2 or 3 points just because of what this... Literally because of the decision of the stewards to get
Abu Dhabi, so 21-point difference, I believe, between the two constructors, but
would have been
it's gonna
plus.
So it's gonna have to be McLaren would probably have to fall off like a lot, like they would have to at least be in the 8s to 10s for not to win it, I would say.
Not really. I mean, if Ferrari will basically have to win. They'll have to one car.
Ferrari will have to be.
You get 25 there. Yeah. Yet another guy if they come first and third. Let's say that car is very fast, but they're expecting it to be 25 and 18. That's 43 points. How far ahead are they?
21.
21. So if they get 43, that means McLaren will have to get over 23, and that means 23 points. That's even if you come 4th and 5th. I don't know if that's 23 points.
I think it is.
I think it goes 25, 18, 15, 12, 10, 8. Then 9, 8, I think. So, maybe 5th and 6th or 4th and 5th. But, if one has a car problem, like, because of this penalty, it's left it open now where McLaren will have one mistake, like a car engine failure, run into someone in the first turn, get a penalty, have a bad pit stop. Any of the multitude of things that can happen in an F1 race.
So much things can happen.
So many. If one of those things happen to one of their cars and Ferrari perform well, obviously they have to perform well, but if they do, then that's it.
Yeah.
If Lando comes second in this race, they have a massive buffer, and they would have to basically both cars would have to collapse, which is a lot more in McLaren's favour. Yeah. So it's a hugely important penalty, and I hate seeing the stewards and race control decide these things. I said that was the problem with Abu Dhabi for Lewis and Max, that it felt like the stewards had such a hand in, or the race director effectively had such a hand in the outcome of that race. You really just want the drivers and the teams to settle it. You want the stewards to just have a blanket rules, to just have less of an input as possible. But yet today it felt like the stewards effectively decided that the championship battle was going to be closer than it should have been because of the penalty they gave.
Yeah, even if you just consistency.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all anyone can hope for is consistency. I think in any sport.
Where the hell
that
did
people
they press the wrong
about.
button? Did they mean to press stop go penalty? Did they mean to just press the 10 second? It's like, oops, wrong penalty. We can't go back now. Like I said, we've seen barely any stop go penalties. Yeah. Why would they all of a sudden give a stop go penalty for an infringement that is not anywhere near the worst penalty, like the worst infringement we've seen this year? Yet they give it nearly the most severe penalty we've seen this year. I mean, it's insane. It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe it makes sense to some of you listening, but I said I'd love to hear your rationale because I can't make sense of it.
But as a Formula One fan, it's just going to be a last race sort of spectacle.
There is one more thing I'm interested to get your thoughts on this. I am not a fan of the McLaren switching cars over for manipulate who wins the races. Like, we're Australian. We love Piastri.
Yeah.
But it's such an empty win. Like, why are we switching for, I lead the entire race, and now at the finish line, I'm just going to give Oscar the win. I understand they did it because they're trying to, fix Oscar gave Lando the win earlier, but I'm just not a fan of these teams basically artificially manipulating the positions they're in. Like, let the drivers race. I understand it's a team sport, but it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth when these teams are deciding, in the middle of the race where they should finish and give DRS help and all this sort of stuff. It's like, it just seems for me like it's not in the spirit of the sport. I don't know how you feel about it.
I'm so glad you brought this up. I don't know if I've got some biases towards the personalities of I'm talking about Lando, but it seemed like I got the taste of, okay, you'll help me, again, when it comes down to it, maybe in a Grand Prix where there's a bit more points on the line. I'm kind of just like, why? It's not real racing.
Yeah, it's a sprint.
I guess, I know they're a team. They're trying to get maximum, but even then, they're, again, the same amount of points. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, it seemed like a sort of a face-saving, Oscar helped me out another race, so I'm going to help him out this race. But it's not that important. It's like a sprint race where it's like a 1 point difference. And doesn't actually change anything. It's just like, I'm Lando.
And the team was telling him, just stay as you are.
Yeah,
the team told, and then
it seems as though it was just a thing where he's like, okay, I can get some positive PR here. I look good.
That's what makes me think of it as a.
But yet it doesn't actually cost anything. It's one of those weird. Are you going to do that in the real race? Why wouldn't you do that on a Sunday? If you really want to give Oscar the win, why wouldn't you do it on a Sunday? For me, I just don't think it should be done full stop. I don't think there should be any of this switching around, deciding who gets to win, who doesn't win. Unless one car. I only accept it when, in the race, say, for example, one car's on fresh tyres, the other car's on old tyres. You want to switch them around so that the guy on the younger tyres can get ahead. Understand that. But deciding who wins the races by team orders is just so not in the spirit of the sport. And as you said, for Lando to do it in a sprint race like that just felt like it was just not in good taste. It didn't feel like it was hey, Oscar, I appreciate you, for what you've helped me out this year. It was like I'm going to do it in a situation that doesn't really mean anything so that I can gain some positive reinforcement or help later down the track. It just left a bad taste.
And that's why it doesn't help that argument as to it sort of diminishes the sprint race value.
Yeah,
people are saying, okay.
And the way it was done, when you're coming down the home stretch to win the race and all of a sudden the leader's stopping and letting another guy win, it's like, are we not racing to win?
And third place was close.
Yeah,
it's not like it was.
No, it's just a bad look. I think at the end of the day, winning and the individual drivers should have the desire to win every race possible.
Yeah.
And I understand there is team dynamics and all this sort of stuff, but it's a sport. Yes, it's a team sport, but it did not matter in the slightest to the team because it was a 1-2 either way. If anything, it risked more for the team because the guy coming third could have come through and come second or first. Yeah. So it actually risked more for the team. It wasn't better for the team in any way, shape or form. It was sort of like just a personal goal of Lando to generate some positive publicity.
I see motorsport as a driver, car and team sport, but team as in their internal car team, not his partner, not the partner's team. I just see motorsport as that. I don't know.
The team's job is to maximise the points, okay? Who wins the race should be up to the drivers. The team should not manipulate which driver wins and which driver doesn't win. As long as they're maximising the points they could get, as I said, they're letting the faster car go through or whatever so the team gets as many points as they can. Outside of that, they should just let the drivers drive and keep the competitiveness going. You don't want, instead of 20 drivers on the track, effectively 10 drivers on the track because all the drivers are merging into one. Like, that's just not how the sport should go. Yeah. And the drivers of old would be looking back on this and going, what? Like, can you imagine Senna or like these older guys looking back and going, letting their teammate go through and win a race? Like, no, that's literally why you drive, to win the races. Yeah. So I think it's a bad habit to start getting into. Like 100%. These teams, we've spoken about this before, F1 teams micromanaging everything in the race, like managing which, the DRS range, when we should swap around, which car should win.
Who should come into the pit first.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think all these artificial manipulation is just, I understand the analytics will probably back it up because, you want to make sure you're maximizing every chance, but at the end of the day, it's racing, it's driving, it's competitiveness. You want these race drivers to have the competitive edge to go out and win every race. You don't want to sort of temper their competitiveness by turning them into just glorified babysitters of the cars. Like, you want their personality, their competitiveness, the reason why they're in there in the first place, to shine through. Now, yes, you don't want it to go too far where they're running their teammate off the track like a Esteban Ocon, but you want that fine line where the drivers are doing everything they can to win within the rules which the team set. Yeah. I think that's the sweet spot. You don't want to go beyond that where you're fighting each other, but you want to go too far the other way where the team is literally deciding exactly what happens, what you're doing on the track. The drivers have to have some autonomy. So, yeah, I don't know. That's where I fall on it.
I think it's well said. I'm on the same page as you there.
Yeah, I just watched that. It left such a bad taste in my mouth. And so I'm not the huge Lando fan, but yeah, just for Oscar, it's like, okay, I won, but I didn't win. Like, everyone knows he didn't win. Like, it's doing it on the last corner. He's like literally left it as late as he possibly could. Like, it's not as if he did it 2 laps before and let Oscar drive away and win. It was literally, I won this race, but I'm going to let Oscar come through and win and get the win, even though I really won the race. Like, it's such an empty...
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's an empty gesture. Yeah. I don't think it's in the spirit of the sport. And as I said, Lando fans will say, good on him for returning the favour to Oscar, but I would just respond and say, did he really return the favour? Did he really give Oscar anything except some embarrassment for winning a race he didn't actually win? I'd say no. Yeah.
I mean, I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Hopefully people on the talk agree. Maybe I reckon this F1 will be a good YouTube vid to put up. That whole
F1
100%.
Seg. Yeah, for sure.
I reckon we broke that down nicely.
Yeah,
Not
definitely.
To toot our own horns here. If you're still listening to the full pod at this stage,
that is,
credit to you. 100%. I swear, hey, credit to you. Any of Tom's family listening, respect.
And if you're not watching the full pod, please head over to YouTube and check it out. Like, it's
Yeah, watch the full pod. I mean, for everyone, we do upload the full videos on YouTube. Come check them out. We're going to start uploading segments on YouTube.
Yep.
Obviously, most people will know us from TikTok and YouTube Shorts.
Yep.
But I think you get more from it from the full length. You get more of our personality, how 100%. We analyse the sport, how we sort of interact, and sort of just our perspective on sport. Like, yes, we like to be analytical, but we don't want to take it too seriously because we're not ESPN analysts trying to break down the ins and outs and grind the all 22. You know what I mean?
Legit, 2 guys just sitting on blue chairs in a garage talking absolute whatever they like.
The secrets, bro. We're in a expensive studio.
We're in the Mojo Dojo.
Yeah, this expensive studio in the Mojo Dojo Castle House. So don't give away the secrets.
Hey, it could be a nice garage. It is a nice garage.
It is a nice garage. I mean, there's a fair bit in this garage.
100%.
You want to have a sauna? Have a sauna. Hey, you want to play some games? You want to watch some TV? You want to play some hockey? I mean, you've got everything.
You got everything here.
And it's only getting bigger and better too. I mean, there's going to be a lot going on in here soon.
Oh, yeah. So stay tuned, baby. Stay tuned.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're going to see me everywhere. I'm going to start plugging Twitch on here soon. Get ready. Any gamers out there?
I love it. But no, I reckon let's wrap it up there. That was a great app.
Yeah, that was good.
So we'll
be back for What day is it today? Monday. We'll be back for probably, I don't know when we'll...
Week and a half. The Friday, right?
Yeah, probably do the... when are you on holes?
I'm on holidays in 2 weeks.
So not next week?
No.
Right,
no.
So next week's your last week? Or
next week's my last week.
Oh, okay, cool. So next Friday you're finished?
Next Friday I finish.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good, eh? So we'll be back on either the Friday or the Saturday. We'll see how you're doing on the Friday, if you want to do it on the Saturday or not. But
Friday should be fine. So
then we'll be able to get a nice schedule going.
Yeah.
And it'll be good.
Good luck to the Aussies in Adelaide.
Yeah.
Please.
Big test. I mean, man, you lose this one, it's it's game over, eh?
We already touched on it, but we know how big this actually one has to be.
That'll probably be the lead story on this on the pod.
Probably
Next
will.
step, I reckon we'll lead with the cricket. Hopefully it's an entertaining match and not a blowout. Hopefully it's a good back and forth, and we have plenty. I'm sure there'll be plenty of storylines either way, but I'm sure that'll be the leading story. We'll have a lot of NFL to catch up on.
Hopefully some comeback stories.
Yeah, a lot of NFL to catch up on. We'll have a bit of the Prem to talk about. Maybe touch on the NBA as well. It's been a while.
Yeah, we haven't touched on the NBA in a while.
Over the Christmas period, a lot of NBA games over the Christmas period, obviously, and we'll see what else breaks. Maybe some NRL news and whatnot, and we'll be here to break it all down.
100%. Appreciate you guys.
Peace out.